Well, welcome everybody to part four, the final issue of our monthly online program, and this one on the stigma of addiction. I was reading Stanton Peele's new book the other day. Even if you don't agree with Stanton Peele, he's a very fine scholar, and I always encourage people to read as much about everything as you can. And he reminded me of, he actually has a little blurb in there on Drew Barrymore. And Drew Barrymore is a wonderful example of someone who's overcome the stigma of addiction. I don't know if you know her background, but she started drinking at the age of 9. By 13, she was a full-blown addict. In fact, Time magazine, or one of these national magazines, actually called her the youngest addict in America. 13 years old, geez, poor kid. At any rate, and I've heard these experts on television say, oh yes, well, Drew got brought up in an addicted family, and so she had the genetics, so she's stuck with being an addict for the rest of her life, and oh, every day she's going to have to, keep it under control and everything. And poor old Drew, of course, was listening to all this, right? She's only a kid, right? And all these expert adults are telling her what she has to do and what she doesn't have to do, and it's just unbelievable. And anyway, by the age of 13, she clearly thought that there was something defective about her. Anyway, by the time she became a young woman, though, she had outgrown it. She'd stopped drug use, she'd outgrown this. And as far as I know, she's actually making a pretty good career. I think she's probably a pretty good actress. And so she overcame this. Now, I was thinking about it. What happens if she started actually listening to all these so-called experts? I mean, holy mackerel, she'd start thinking that there was something wrong with her, that she had no control, that she was, it's my old joke, all addicts are liars, con artists, and cheats, and in any case, the brain chemistry is mush. They couldn't make a good decision if their life depended on it. If she was brought up thinking, oh God, I'm different than every other human being, I'm not, there must be something wrong with me. If she actually internalized all that, actually believed it, I don't think she could have done half of what she's accomplished in her life. But she didn't. And that is the great thing, right? She overcame the stigma. And as a role model, I think Drew Barrymore is very good for addicts. It's quite possible to overcome that. And some of the other role models, too, that you can think about are like Anne Rice. Anne Rice and her husband were drinking quite a bit in their younger years. But Anne Rice has since overcome that. And now, of course, she writes specifically on religious themes. And Eric Clapton is another fellow who does not consider himself a defective human being or anything. In fact, in his autobiography, he actually calls himself a healer. And he's so grateful for all the loved ones around him. So whatever Eric Clapton did to overcome addiction, he's rid himself of the stigma that is attached to it. And as we've been mentioning all through this series, that the stigma actually inhibits and actively inhibits recovery, and we know this from research. And so to be able to overcome this. So one of the things I always like to say, well, if you've been here in the last couple of years, you've heard this phrase, is that you are the author of your life. Just like Drew Barrymore, right? She had a choice. She could have listened to all these people and considered herself a defective human being who was basically doomed by her genetics. Or she could say, no, that's not true. Like, I'm a valuable human being, and then go off and live the life she wanted to live, right? Because she is the author of her life. And there are lots of people around you who will, I don't know, maybe your lover, who might even remind you, oh yeah, these are just like, you are just like it used to be. Nothing's changed. And if you internalize that and really take this to heart, I mean, you're going to run into all sorts of problems. Even last month, I even mentioned a couple of cases where former clients have actually fallen into this trap. And they believe their duty is to act in such a way to appease family members. But being the author of your life is a recognition that in our society, the stigma is very powerful. But you get to make a choice. You get to decide what kind of life you want to live and how you want to live it. And if that choice is governed by the stigma, you're going to have a lot rougher life than you need to have. At any rate, it's a tough one, there's no question about it. But it's one of those things you're just going to have to like work at, and as we've been doing in this online program for the last month, one, recognize if you do have the stigma, and then start actively working to overcome it. So last week I gave you 3 tips to do it, and this week the big tip is remember that you are the author of your life, right? You get to make a choice, just like Drew Barrymore made a choice, just like Eric Clapton made a choice, just like Anne Rice made a choice. And you can go on and live this fantastic life, but you have to get this big weight off your shoulders that says you are a defective human being, you're irresponsible, you're immoral, all that kind of stuff. Somehow you have to lift that off, and the sooner the better. But anyway, being the author of your life, you got to work on this one. Anyway, as always, we've got a few questions on the online program. If you want to fill it out and send it in, that'd be fantastic. And we'll see you next month with a new theme.